Hey there guys, my name's David Bond and today I'm checking out the Camplifier Poweramp units available from KPA Solutions, and they're designed to run in the back of a Kemper Profiling Amp. So the Kemper then is essentially a line level device that's designed to run into a PA system, a recording interface of some kind, or a power amp such as these. So Kemper make two different versions of the profiling amp. They've got the unpowered version and they've got the Powerhead version, which already includes a 600 watt power amp. So why would anyone want to buy a power amp from a different company and combine it with a Kemper? Well, there's a few different reasons for that. Let me start with the scenario that you, for example, own a Kemper that is the unpowered version, yet you want it to be the Powerhead. At the moment, there's absolutely no way to upgrade your Kemper to a Powerhead. You have to sell your existing unit and then buy a Powerhead from Kemper. So that's quite a hassle. You're going to lose some money when you sell your old unit, and then you've got to pay extra for the Powerhead as well, since it's more expensive. Let's have a look at the scenario then that you're in the market to buy a Kemper and you're trying to decide whether to buy the Powerhead or whether to buy the unpowered version and combine it with a Camplifier. Seems like the obvious thing to do if you wanted to buy a powered version of a Kemper would be to just buy the Powerhead. However, there's some pretty distinct advantages of buying the unpowered version and combining it with the Camplifier. So let's have a look at money first of all then. The Powerhead costs €2,150 at the moment. The unpowered version costs €1,590. So in effect, that means that you're paying €560 just for the power amp itself then. The Camplifiers, you've got three different versions, and they range from €399 all the way through to €499. So on money alone, there's savings to be made, put it that way, if you buy a Camplifier instead of the Powerhead version. So let's have a look at other reasons then. Well, the power amp from Kemper that comes in the Powerheads is a 600 watt mono power amp. That's a single channel power amp. Whereas the Camplifiers are available either as 180 watt mono, or you've got a 90 watt stereo, so that's 90 watts per channel, or 180 watts combined mono, or you've got 180 watts stereo. So the advantage of buying a stereo power amp over a mono is, well, it's pretty self-explanatory. It means that you can run two cabinets and you can get all of your panning stereo effects and whatnot going on between those two cabs. So let's have a look at the wattages then. Well, the Powerhead power amp from Kemper is rated at 600 watts. Now, I don't have a bad word to say about Kemper. The profiling amp is absolutely amazing. And I've got a really good relationship with Kemper and they've been very kind to me. But what I will say is that 600 watts is pretty much unnecessary for any user. It's a hell of a lot of headroom that basically no one is ever going to use. And I can see the reason for it. Essentially, they make it as powerful as possible just to account for every possible scenario. However, the Camplifiers are lower wattage, so you're saving money because you're not putting as much money into wattage that you're never going to use, basically. You got the 180, which at mono is 180 watts, and it's a mono power amp. You got the Camplifier 290, which is a stereo power amp, and both of those channels are running at 90 watts or combined at 180 watts. And then you've got the Camplifier 360, which runs 2 channels stereo at 180 watts each. So some of you guys might be worrying, well, low wattage, is that going to be enough? You know, am I going to notice the difference? Is it going to be too quiet when I'm playing with my band? And when I was putting together material for this demo, I was talking with the Camplifier creators, Tillman Ritter, and he asked me to address the issue of, are the Camplifiers loud enough to play for rock bands to gig with and to rehearse with and so on? And let me put it this way, I've played with a lot of bands over the years, different styles. I've played in rock bands, I've played in metal bands, blues bands, jazz bands, and I've owned lots of different amplifiers as well over time. Now the most powerful amplifier that I've ever owned was a 100-watt Engel Powerball. And I played that in some pretty big venues at metal gigs, you know, where everything is blisteringly loud. And at no point did I run that anywhere near full strength. At maximum, maybe half strength, something like that. 60–70% absolute tops. Because the reason for that is you play a big venue and your cabs are going to get mic'd up. So there's absolutely no need to be running your amp at full strength. It's not a good idea, it's not good for the amplifier, and it's just unnecessary. Plus you're going to get so much feedback and it's going to be deafening everyone on stage. So if over the years I've never had to run a 100-watt amplifier at full strength, there's absolutely no way that you're going to suffer by buying a 180-watt power amp. It's definitely enough headroom. And if you're not gigging in a big venue, if you're playing in a pub or if you're rehearsing, well, the room's a lot smaller, so you don't need to throw out as much volume. So even if you're not miking up your cabinets, you'll still have more than enough headroom with 180 watts. So let's check out the actual interface itself on the Kemper, and we're going to see how we control the Camplifier using the Kemper. Okay, so controlling the Camplifier using the Kemper, very easy to do. We're going to use the output section of the Kemper's interface, and you'll see on the second camera angle exactly what I'm doing. So I'm going to do some playing. I'm going to give you some sounds as to what this comes out like. Everything that you've heard so far has actually been the direct output of the Kemper, so you haven't been hearing the Camplifier. We'll do some comparison tests, but it should be noted that any comparisons here are going to sound different. It's inevitable because there's factors in play that we really can't control. So we've got the ambience of the room, we've got the cabinets, constructions, we've got the speakers that are in the cabs, and we've got the microphones as well. But what I've done is I've set up an SM57 a little bit further back from the cabinets so that hopefully we can just capture the sound that the Camplifier is putting out in this room combined with these cabs. You'll get a little bit of spill through my lapel mic, no doubt, as well. But let's check it out then. Dr. Z Maz 38 is the amp profile that I'm using. And this is the direct send from the Kemper. Sounds like this. So nice crystal clean sounds. I'm going to go to the output section then so you can see what's going on. Turn off the cabinet simulator and I'm going to route to the top cabinet that you can see there. That's the green Weinbrock 4x10, which on clean sounds like this. And let's move to the next cabinet, which is the Mesa Boogie 4x10 cab, which sounds like this. On clean, same amp model. So as you can hear, a very transparent sound. It's not coloring the tone in any way. Let's combine these cabs then. So I'm going to bring the monitor channel up, which is my Weinbrock 4x10 cab. And this is sounding like this: combined Weinbrock and Mesa Boogie cabinets. So now let's check out some dirty, overdriven sounds as well then. So I'm going to leave it set up as it is. I'm just going to engage a stomp box on the front of the Kemper. It's the OD pedal. So it sounds like this. Let's check out the direct send from the Kemper then. So I'll bring up the main channel and I'll re-engage the cabinet simulator. Alright, so let's check out the individual differences between the three Camplifier units. You can see all three of them in shots here. In the foreground we've got the Camplifier 180. Installed in my Kemper unit here at the back we've got the Camplifier 290, and then here in the middle we've got the 360. So the individual differences then. The 180, let's start at the front, is a single channel power amplifier, capable of putting out one channel at 180 watts. And it's rated at 8 ohms. I'll come back to this in just a second. Moving on to the 290 then. This is now a stereo amplifier. So we can put two channels out, and as you can see we've got two inputs and two outputs, whereas the 180 only had one input and one output. So the 290 is now capable of putting out two channels, both rated at 90 watts each at 4 ohms. Or you can put out 50 watts at 8 ohms. However, what you can also do with the 290, which isn't possible with the other two, is to run it in bridged mode, which is this output here, where you combine the power of both of these two channels into one channel. And this one channel would then be rated at 180 watts. Moving on to the 360 then, as you can see this is also a stereo power amplifier. But this is just basically higher wattage. So with the 360, you've got two channels, both rated at 180 watts at 8 ohms. Other than that, they're very similar. They use much the same circuitry. It's just that they're putting out different amounts of wattages. You can see they all have an on-off switch on the back here and a power entry. Other than that, very similar. The one thing that I wanted to point out here is that we've got a volume pot here. And this is an optional add-on which you can have on either the 360 or the 180. And literally, as the name suggests, all it does is controls the volume. Now, it's not necessary because you can control the volume within the Kemper, on the output section of the Kemper. It's just that some people maybe want to be in control of the volume from the back of the unit as well. Alright, so let's talk about installation then. Installing the Camplifier really couldn't be easier. It's very simple to do. Essentially what you're going to need to do is remove all of the screws that you see going around the back of the Kemper. I've already taken most of mine out, so this is a little bit quicker to do on the demo. To remove them, you're going to need one of these star-shaped hexa key kits. It's not an Allen key, it's a hex star shape. But you can get one of these devices from any of your local hardware stores. So very carefully remove all the screws from the back. Be sure not to drop any of the screws down into the cavity, since there's some holes leading through to the wiring here. And then once you've removed them all, you're going to take your Camplifier and carefully insert it into the cavity in the back of the Kemper. Once it's in place, take your screws that come with the Camplifier, These are regular Phillips head screws, so you don't need the star hex for that. You're just going to use a regular Phillips head screwdriver. And screw all the screws in, making sure that the holes are lining up with the holes in the Kemper. So I'm not going to put all of them in now, again, just for the sake of being brief. But let's have a look at the back panel then while we're here. So there's not all that much going on the back of the Camplifier. Essentially we've got some inputs over here, inputs here and outputs here. I'll come to the bridge mode in just a second, but these are the inputs. So you've got left and right, or if you just want to do in mono, then you would plug into the right. And then you've got outputs here, which you can either plug a regular jack lead into, like this, or you can plug the optional speak-on cables into. KPA Solutions recommend the speak-on cables as a more reliable way of plugging into it, but as I say, you can use jacks as well. So let's just talk about this bridged mode then. Essentially this allows us to take the strength of both of these outputs and combine them into one. And there's a warning here that says connect speakers to this socket only for bridged mode, remove all other speaker cables. It's also stressed in the instructions manual, so I can only assume that this is pretty important. God only knows what horrible things would happen if you plugged into all of them. So make sure you only plug into the bridged mode output if that's what you're wanting to do. We've also got a power socket here that we need to power. And you might notice that there's obviously the regular power socket as well on the Kemper down here. So what you can do is either use two regular kettle leads, or you can use the cable which is supplied by KPA Solutions. So that takes me on to the cables that are available to go with this as accessories. Let's just check out this power cable that I mentioned. So as you can see, this is a regular kettle lead, except for the fact that it has two outputs, as you can see here. Wait for my camera to get in focus. So that's great, because that means you only have to use one cable to connect the whole Kemper Camplifier rig to the power. The other cable options that you've got, if you want to purchase them, would be the speak-on to jack cable, which looks like this. And this is pretty simple. You've just got a jack output and a speak-on cable on the other end. So that means that you can plug this into your cabinet and this into the back of your Camplifier. And the other ones that you can get are very small patch leads. So this is how we're going to connect the Camper and the Camplifier and the Kemper together. So we're going to take outputs from the Kemper, say the main left output here, and we're going to put that into the left input of the Camplifier. And then same again, right output of the Kemper going into the right input of the Camplifier, like that. Cables stay really nice and neat, so you haven't got any excess cables dragging around at the back there. You've got a few other options as well in terms of routing. If you're wanting to keep your main outputs free for recording, you can take an output from the monitor output here, and then another one from the direct output. So that's great, because that means it keeps your main outputs free if you're wanting to monitor whilst you're recording, or if you're wanting to use two cabs on stage while sending the main outputs to front of house. Nice and easy to do. One thing to bear in mind, that with the current Kemper firmware, there's only an option to switch the cab simulator off for the monitor output. There's no option at the moment, at the time that I'm recording this, to switch off the cabinet simulator for the direct output. So what this means is that if you're wanting to monitor live through a stereo cabinets whilst recording, or monitor through stereo cabs on stage, you can't do that essentially, because you have to switch the cabinet simulator off, which would mean that you then get a horrific sound coming out of the main outputs with no cabinet simulator. However, as a solution at the moment, what you can do is to just monitor in mono through the monitor output and still get the cabinet simulator going to the main outputs.